The city of Trenton, New Jersey has a rich history of segregation, practiced both legally and illegally. During an age of musical change, this played a large role in the development of musical genres and subgenres that are unique to the city's culture, including blues, funk, and hardcore punk. Although historians praise venues such as City Gardens for its prominence in the Trenton music scene, Will and I were curious as to what it means to be a Trenton musician today. Our questions were answered by local musician Charles Larita. Charles grew up attending and performing at a multitude of venues in the Trenton area. He stated that music was something that seemed to click with him, and was something that he could do as a job that didn't feel like a job.
When Kurt and I interviewed Charles Larita, we got valuable insight into his musical upbringing, as well as information about the current state of live music in Trenton.
Yeah. First public venue I played at was it was the Mercer Airport. There was a restaurant in the airport. It was called General's Quarters. I think it's called the Runway now.
Okay.
And that was like the first big taste of it, because it was like, wow, I can do this. I can do something that's fun and people like it, and I can make a career out of this. It's like, I'm set. That's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Like my teacher was Ernie White. Everybody knows Ernie White here. And it was nice because I was so young when I was going to see these guys, because since I was in bars so often, the only people there to talk to were people, not my age. They were just older people, and I had to learn to talk to them, so it worked better because I could speak to adults, no problem, and that was great at such a young age. And I started meeting all of these musicians when I'm like 10 years old, so I grew up with all these people, that was like a second family, a lot of these guys, and it was, tons of local people like that. It was, Ernie White, Tom Rioch he was one of my big heroes, because he was one of my big mentors for recording stuff.
He's a great man.
Yeah, he's awesome, and he taught me so much about studio work that I never knew. But yeah, definitely the local scene. I mean, that's all I knew for the longest time was this local scene, because I idolized these guys that I saw every week.
Charles talked about some of the frequent gigs that he plays with his band in and around Trenton.
A little of both. Some of the places I used to go when I was really, obviously, like the Ivy Tavern.
That's right down the road.
That's fairly close. Pete's Steakhouse was another one of them. JoJo's Tavern. The one I used to go to all the time was Tortugas, that was in Trenton as well. There were a whole bunch. Cedar Gardens, when that came back into play, that was the biggest for us. And it was like the smallest place. It was one of the most impactful places.
Yeah.
Besides bars, there are events such as benefits that bring musicians together for a good cause. Benefits such as Art All Night are still popular and are enjoyed by musicians and fans alike.
It's not very fun. But yeah, that's an awesome idea. I think that Jim Graziano does all the music organization for that. He's like a champ with that. Like, that's always run very flawless. No, it's great. That grungy atmosphere is very cool. Yeah. And it's everything, because it's what art should be. It's you're taking nothing and making it into something, and that's what that building is, and that's what that whole aesthetic of that thing is. That's cool.
Charles fully agreed with us on our thoughts regarding the activity of the current Trenton music scene. He listed a whole bunch of venues that no longer exist or host bands. Charles says that his band will only book liquor venues, not dry venues, because alcohol is what brings people out today. Because cover fees aren't common anymore, payment and attention given to bands is poor. He said that if he had a nickel and a dime for every time he was forced to cram his 6-piece band in a corner, he would have what was equivalent to one nice night of pay. Next, we asked him what genre currently dominates the Trenton music scene.
As far as what dominates, it's very narrow-minded. Not in a condescending way, because there are tons of genres, but you'll never know about them. Because it's very overshadowed by only rock, only blues. That's it.
The sound of Charles's band is unique in the sense that they do not try to fit into a certain genre, but rather just play whatever they enjoy. This is not an easy thing to do in Trenton bars, where owners mostly look for rock or blues bands.
They'll take a chance, but it doesn't have the outpouring that a rock or blues group would have. And there's nothing wrong with that, with that kind of thing, but I think people are so afraid to venture away from what they're accustomed to.
Charles is opposed to the idea of musical genres. He feels that the music scene suffers because of a closed-minded look on music genres, song covers, and original material. The oral history of City Gardens demonstrates how this was not always the case. Other bars weren't like City Gardens. You had to dress a certain way or drive a certain car. At City Gardens, everyone was equal and it didn't matter who you were. The cool thing about City Gardens was that you could have been an executive, you could have been sneakers, you could have been an early punk rocker or an early new waver, or a hippie. You could be whoever you were and it didn't matter.
Focusing on the current state of the music scene in Trenton, Charles discussed the opportunity that exists for a new venue in the city to open up in the mold of City Gardens. Despite the less than ideal economic conditions of Trenton, he insists that there is still a demand for live music.
Because it's like the oil well, it just kind of went dry, and I think if they just keep digging again, they'll get another big spurt of it. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason why it should have just stopped cold turkey. Because there's a couple places, but it's not what it once was. Just the fact that people used, in the 70s and 80s came from New York and Philadelphia to come here.
Nationally famous bands played.
Yeah. I mean, everybody was here. This was a huge deal, and it's gone. And I just wish it was initiated. So Cedar Gardens contacted me and they said we want to start doing music. And what Ted always talked about was, let's do music in the banquet halls. We have these halls, we have stages, no one's using them. Let's make it a music venue again. The first night we start music back here again, wait and see how many musicians are going to be in the audience, because they're just going to be excited that, wow, it's a music venue. It's not a bar in the corner. There's a stage, there's a sound system. It's like the lights and the show, and it's a concert. Just a different atmosphere change is such a big thing, and it really gets people to just be immersed in it, because it's like, okay, now we have a cover charge to play. Well, we're not going into a bar, we're going into a venue, so it's like, okay, this makes more sense. Sure, no problem. That kind of thing.
Will and I learned that musicians such as Charles Larita are few and far between. To find someone so insightful and motivated is rare in comparison to the cynicism that has developed in a time where the music venue has no meaning to anyone, and the music scene is dominated by just a few genres. Charles stated that imagination is the greatest tool you'll ever work with. Perhaps with the rise of other musicians like Charles, we can hope to have a more active music scene and a richer culture for the city of Trenton.
I got no reason, to give up what I got. The perfect season for